Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and we warmly welcome the family of Gunner Arthur Roy Edwards, whose story will be told shortly by Wing Commander Nick Edwards from the Royal Australian Air Force, who is Gunner Arthur Roy Edwards' great-nephew. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. We also acknowledge the members of the RSL Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland, who are watching the ceremony broadcast across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by family and visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. Thank you, visitors. If you're able, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Gunner Arthur Roy Edwards. Arthur Roy was born on the 26th of February 1893, the youngest son of Louisa and Thomas Edwards of the Hobart suburb of Battery Point. Edwards enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 9th of August 1915, and after training sailed from Melbourne aboard the transport ship Port Lincoln for Egypt. Edwards was too late to join Australian troops on the Gallipoli Peninsula and instead prepared to take part in fighting on the Western Front. Edwards continued his training first by attending artillery school in Tel El Kebir in Egypt and later in England. In March 1917, Edwards sailed for France, where he joined the 112th Howitzer Battery of the 12th Field Artillery Brigade. Edwards joined this unit on exactly the same day as his older brother Charles, and the two brothers served in the same unit in the fighting in France and Belgium for the rest of their war. The Edwards brothers served as artillery gunners, supporting Australian and British operations by firing 4.5-inch howitzers on German positions in support of Australian and British infantry attacks. During infantry attacks on German lines, they provided a supporting barrage. Howitzers also used high explosive shells to weaken and destroy enemy parapets and trenches. Because of the damage artillery could do, the Australian batteries were often the target of German artillery counter-battery fire. Throughout early 1917, the Edwards brothers supported Australian actions as the Germans retreated to a series of shortened and well-defended trenches known as the Hindenburg Line. On the 11th of April 1917, they provided intermittent artillery support fire to the bloody, confused and unsuccessful Australian attack at Bullecourt in northern France. In July 1917, Edwards and the 12th Field Artillery Brigade transferred north to Belgium. On the 20th of September, they provided artillery support for Australian forces taking part in the Battle of Menin Road to the east of Ypres, and on the 26th of September in the Battle of Polygon Wood. Both battles were considered successful by British and Australian forces, but came at the expense of over 10,000 Australian casualties. On the 21st of March 1918, the 12th Field Artillery Brigade was resting near Dranoutre, behind the front lines on the French-Belgian border. Edwards and several men of his unit were on guard duties on the wagon lines at Wormlow camp, when the guard room they were in received a direct hit from a German artillery shell. 3 of the men inside, Arthur Edwards, Leslie Tynan, and Horace Manuel, died instantly. A 4th, Albert Scurra, died of his injuries soon afterwards. Edwards was 25 years old. All 4 men were buried in the Dranoutre Military Cemetery in Belgium, where nearly 500 soldiers of the First World War now lie. Edwards and Scurra, both from Tasmania, are commemorated on the Tasmanian Walk of Honour in Hobart, and their plaques are opposite one another on the path. His brother, Charles Wentworth Edwards, would survive the war, returning home to Australia in May 1919. Gunner Arthur Roy Edwards is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Gunner Arthur Roy Edwards, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the ode and the sounding of the last post.
Age shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years of them. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember.
We'll remember them. leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrubber Gallipoli with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. We'd like to thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial and wish you all a very good evening. Thank you.